Hi, I'm George Woodbury from College of the Sequoias in Visalia, California, and in this video I'm going to go over addition and subtraction with integers, or signed numbers. This was a viewer request for a student that was having trouble understanding how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers. So not only will I go over the rules here and show you how it's done, but I'm also going to try to show you a couple of ways to develop your intuition, which should really speed things up once you truly understand how to add and subtract integers. Let's begin with the rules first. When you're adding numbers with the same sign, you add the absolute values of the two numbers, and then the sign of the sum, or the result, is the same as the sign of each of those numbers. So let's start with this example. Here I've got a positive 8 plus a positive 9. These two numbers have the same sign. So what I'm supposed to do is add the absolute value of the two numbers. Well, the absolute value of 8 is 8. The absolute value of 9 is 9. I add those together, which is 17, and then the sign is going to be the same as each of the numbers since these were both positive. My result is positive 17. You don't have to write positive when it is positive. Let's try another. Negative 7 is negative, and to that we're going to add negative 2, also negative. So these both have the same signs. The absolute value of negative 7 is positive 7. For now, you can basically think of this as the number without its sign. Right? It's the distance between the number and 0 on the number line, but you can think of it as the number without its sign. The absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. Now I'm going to find the sum of these two numbers. So 7 plus 2 is 9. Now I worry about the sign of my answer. And because each of these two numbers were negative, my result is going to be negative as well. Okay? So same, sum. If they have the same sign, you find the sum of the two numbers. Okay? Adding numbers with different signs. If we have two numbers with different signs, rather than adding the absolute values, now we're going to subtract or find the difference. Different signs, find the difference. The sign of the difference is the same as the sign of the number that has the largest absolute value. In other words, the number with the biggest absolute value really dictates the sign of our result. Here's an example. 4 plus negative 6. 4 is positive, 6 is negative. So I have two numbers that have different signs. I'm supposed to subtract the absolute values of these two numbers. The absolute values are 4 and 6. And I want to figure out how far apart are those two. Well, 4 and 6 are 2 apart. Now of these two numbers, the larger absolute value is 6. That tells me that its sign will be the sign of the answer. And so that means in this case we have a negative 2. Here I've got 9 plus negative 3. 9 again is positive. Negative 3 is negative. So I have one of each sign. That tells me I need to subtract. The absolute values of the two numbers are 9 and 3. How far apart are 9 and 3? They are 6 units apart. The largest absolute value is 9. That means that the sign of the 9 is the sign of our answer, and here it's going to be positive. The rules for subtracting integers, and here's where I think it gets a little dicey, a little too formal. The rule for subtracting integers is to add the opposite. Right? We rewrite the difference as a sum, and then we follow the rules for addition that we just took a look at. So here I see 3 minus 8. The rules tell us to rewrite this as 3 plus negative 8. Subtraction is the same as adding the opposite. Now here I've got one of each sign. Right? The 3 is positive, the 8 is negative. The absolute value of 3 is 3. The absolute value of negative 8 is 8. How far apart are those two numbers? They are 5 apart. The largest absolute value tells me the sign of my answer, -5. A lot to remember there, right? We have to change the subtraction to addition, and then we have to reapply the rules that we just learned. We'll see if we can get around that in a moment. Here's another one. Subtraction can be rewritten as addition, adding the opposite. So this is going to be 2 plus, the opposite of -7 is +7. These numbers are both positive, so we can just go ahead and add, and that result's going to be +9. Okay. Let's talk about forgetting the rules. We can use a number line to help us figure out the result. Here's what I want you to remember. Positive is always in the right direction on the number line, and negative is in the left direction. So suppose we're trying to do 8 plus 9. Draw a number line. Our first number is a +8. That's going to be located to the right on the number line. And then we're adding a +9. That's a positive contribution. I need to move 9 units to the right. If I count out the 9 units, I'm going to land at 17. So I'm starting with a positive number, and the +9 makes it more positive. If I take a look again at this addition of two negative numbers, -7 plus -2, the first number is -7. That tells me to start at -7 on the number line. -2 is making a negative contribution. That means it's taking the total to the left. So I move 2 units to the left, and if I count those out, that gets me to -9. Okay. So I started negative, and then I made the number more negative by adding a -2. Let's take a look at the number line for these. 4 plus -6 tells me to start at +4, and then the -6 tells me to move 6 units to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units to the left, and if I count that out, that puts me at -2. So 4 plus -6 is the same as -2. 9 plus -3, I need to start at the first number. I'm going to start at 9. Adding a -3 tells me to move 3 units to the left. And that leaves me at +6. So 9 plus -3 is +6. 3 minus 8. Okay, remember the rules told us to rewrite this as 3 plus -8. Let's forget about that for now. +3 is my starting value. Now I'm going to move 8 units in which direction? Well, since it's contributing in the negative fashion, I'm going to go 8 to the left. 1, 2, 3 gets me back to 0, and then there are 5 more. 3 minus 8 is -5. 2 minus -7. Here's the only case. When you run into this double sign combination, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive number. I think you should rewrite this. This double sign is pretty confusing. Minus -7 is the same as +7. This tells me that I'm going to be starting at the first number, which is 2. And then I'm moving 7 units to the right. And if I count that out, that should get me to +9. Okay. So if you think about things in terms of the number line, or even a thermometer, which moves up and down, positive and negative, that's one way to keep these rules straight. Let's talk about another way to do this using manipulatives. And here, to follow along, you really want to have a bunch of pennies and a bunch of nickels. Right. I choose pennies and nickels not because the economy is bad and it's easier to scrounge up some pennies and nickels than it is to scrounge up, $50 and $100 bills, but also because of the first letter. in each of these words. P for pennies is also P for positive, and N for nickels is also N for negative. And I can use this idea of pennies and nickels to help show me what a positive 7 plus a negative 9 should look like. 8 plus 9. The 8 is positive. That means I can display that with 8 pennies. Right? You should put the 8 pennies in front of you. Plus 9, that's also positive. I'm going to put 9 pennies down. And when they're all the same sign, I just have to count them. And 8 and these 9 add up to be a positive 17. There are 17 pennies. My result is positive 17. Negative 7 means that I have 7 nickels. The 2 is also negative. That means that I have 2 nickels. And when I group them together, that means that I have 9 nickels, negative 9. All right, so here's where it really is beneficial. I've got a positive 4 and I'm adding a negative 6. Positive 4 means I can put 4 pennies down. And negative 6 means I put down 6 nickels. The idea here is that I'm going to group, every time I have both types of coins, I'm going to match them up and get rid of them. A positive 1 and a negative 1, I don't want to use the word cancel, but essentially they cancel each other out. Adding 1 and subtracting 1 leaves you at the same exact spot. So this penny and nickel cancel each other, as do those two and those two. What's left? 2 nickels, negative 2. Okay. Basically, we're comparing the size of the positive contributions with the negative contributions. The negative contributions are larger. How many more were there? There were 2 more, negative 2. 9 plus negative 3, 9 positives, 9 pennies. Negative 3, 3 nickels. These 3 and these 3 work each other out. What's left? 6 pennies. That result is a positive 6. 3 minus 8. How does this 3 contribute? It contributes in a positive way. It's a positive 3. Minus 8. How does that contribute? It contributes in a negative way. 3 pennies, 8 nickels. Those 3 pennies take care of those 3 nickels. What remains? 5 nickels, negative 5. The negative contribution is 5 bigger than the positive contribution. 2 minus negative 7. Again, that double sign combination, I would always begin by changing it to plus 7. 2 pennies, 7 pennies. Nothing cancels out here, so we just total them and we're left with 9 pennies, positive 9. So let's discuss the overall strategy. The first thing I think you need to do is get rid of any double signs that you have. So plus a negative, I would just write as a subtraction, right? 7 plus negative 3, change that to 7 minus 3. 4 minus negative 9, minus negative 9, change that to plus 9. Once the double signs are gone, total up all the positive integers you have. If the numbers are all the same type, you can add them into one super positive integer. Do the same for all the negative integers, and that's going to leave you with one subtraction problem at the end. Okay? Sometimes we call this checkbook math. You add up all the deposits together, positives. You add up all the checks or withdrawals, negative, and then you find the difference between those two. Okay, so let's go through an example first without the double signs. 7 minus 8 minus 11 plus 4 minus 19. The 7 and 4 are both positive. So I can add those together to get 11. The minus 8, minus 11, and minus 19 are all negative, so I can add those together. 8 plus 11 is 19. 19 plus 19 is 38. So this big complicated problem boils down to just be 11 minus 38. I've got one number making a positive contribution and one making a negative. That tells me that I need to find the difference between those two. Somewhere off to the side, I take the bigger number, absolute value wise, and subtract the smaller. 38 minus 11 is 27. So which contribution is bigger, the positive or the negative? It's the negative. Let's try another example, this time with some double signs. 16 plus negative 7 minus 13 minus negative 5 plus negative 10. Let's rewrite this without double signs. So that's 16 plus negative 7 is the same as minus 7. Just one sign here, minus 13. Minus negative 5 is the same as plus 5. And finally, plus negative 10 is the same as minus 10. The two numbers making positive contributions are 16 and 5. They add to be 21. Let's faintly cross those out and look at the negative numbers that remain. 7, 13, and 10. Those combine to be negative 30. So the problem I have left to answer is 21 minus 30. Again, since I have one of each type, I need to find the difference between 21 and 30. How far apart are 21 and 30? They are 9 apart from each other. What sign will my answer have? Well, the bigger contribution, again, is the negative contribution, negative 9. Well, I hope this is somewhat helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments on this topic or really any others, if you have a request for a video you'd like me to put together for you, you can leave a comment on this video on YouTube, or better yet, you can reach me through the contact page on my website, and that address is georgewoodbury.com. Thanks, and happy adding and subtracting to you.